This is episode 46 of the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Jason.
And I'm Rich.
My name is Steve.
Awesome. All right, well, as always, let's begin by talking about some games we've played. I think I'll start if you guys don't mind.
All right.
I got a chance to play Worldwide Wrestling, finally. I wear the t-shirt all the time that I got from the Kickstarter back, and I've had it for ages, but now I finally got to play it. Worldwide Wrestling, because we haven't talked about it too much on the show yet. It is a Powered by the Apocalypse game telling the story of a professional wrestling promotion. Promotion is like think like World Wrestling Entertainment or WCW, right? Like the wrestling company or whatever, right? That puts on the shows. The players are wrestlers in the promotion. They each have a gimmick. Gimmick is a term of art in wrestling that means your wrestling character, right? So the gimmicks, which are like the playbooks in this game, are, for example, the Hardcore, which is kind of like the Mick Foley, Mankind type character. There's the Golden Boy, which is like Shawn Michaels, or like, I guess Shawn Michaels, Owen Hart, maybe those types of characters. I'm showing all my wrestling nerdery right now.
I was totally thinking, like, not only are you showing your nerdery, you're showing the decade in which you nerded out on World.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, I don't know anything about like, I pretty much end at like Stone Cold Steve Austin is about like the outer limit of like when I was watching wrestling. So when he was a thing, you play these gimmicks. The MC plays creative, and creative is like the company itself, like the production of the company. The creative player, who's the MC, he books all the matches, like every episode, which is every session. He kind of makes a determination of like who's going to be wrestling who, and then he also determines who's going to win. Right? Who's going to win each match. And then you have the wrestling things. The idea, obviously, is not to actually win the wrestling match. Like that's not what you're trying to do when your character is involved in a match. What you're trying to do is to build up like audience goodwill, right? By putting on a show. That's kind of the idea. And I'm led to believe, like, as you play more sessions, the game becomes not just about like the actual kayfabe, which is like the name for the sort of scripted fake aspect of wrestling, right? It becomes less about that and more about like the wrestlers, like real life. So like the two sort of like intermix, and I think that's kind of where the game is at its best. I'm led to believe. Like I've only done one session, so I don't know yet. But the idea is we're not only telling the story of these wrestling characters, we're also telling the story of the real people behind the character. So. Yeah, so that's kind of my little overview of Worldwide Wrestling.
So, Jason, how much of the game is focused around, like, actually playing out matches?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So, mechanically, not mechanically, but the main thing you're doing in the game is you're in these matches, right? Let's say it's my character versus Rich's character, and the MC decides to give me control of the narration, okay? I just narrate, doing stuff in the ring, right? Like, throwing punches, maybe doing a couple of moves, I just describe this sort of back and forth action. And Rich can also kind of like help me as well. Like he can kind of describe how his character reacts and that sort of thing. And we're just trying to like kind of build up like a picture of what's going on in the ring. And then when I get to a point where I want to do like a big splashy wrestling move, like a signature move or something like, something real dramatic, like crawling to the top of the turnbuckle and like diving down on top of Rich or whatever.
Ooh, it's getting sexy.
Yeah, no, it's getting a little sexy. Then it triggers a move called the wrestle move. I think it's what it's called, or work or something like that. And then you roll, and that move determines like how much the audience loves it, and also who now has control of the narration, right? So it might switch to Rich. But if I choose to give it to Rich, I get like some of the currency that shows that the audience is happy with us. And then he gets control of the narration, right? And there are other moves that can trigger too. Like if if in the middle of the match you start like hollering obscenities at the audience or whatever, that triggers a certain move. If you just like grab a microphone and start shit talking or whatever, that triggers another move. And all of it is in aid of, you start with momentum. You're trying to build up momentum, which is a thing you can spend. That is a currency. You can spend it to increase your roll results, which can help you get heat. Okay. And heat is the sort of like abstracted measure of how much the audience is into the relationship between you and the other wrestler, right? So it's the heat between my character and Rich's character, right? We have a heat score. And then if your heat gets high enough, that can help you get audience. And audience is what you're really angling for, because once you get enough audience, then you can advance. It's a progression, right? So they all kind of build on one another. it's all about the audience being into what you're doing and like kind of buying what you're selling. That's kind of the thrust of it. And then in between the wrestling matches, you can engage in like promotional spots, which is the classic, like a guy goes back into the locker room, and says, well, what do you think is going to happen? And and then you talk shit or whatever. And then you make a roll, and that can, affect like what the audience thinks of you, whether you have momentum and that sort of thing. That's basically the whole thing. I mean, like these little interview things can be scripted by creative. Like creative can say, okay, we're going to have this kind of promo, or you as a player can like, narrate yourself going into the locker room and like grabbing a commentator and a camera and going and talking shit or whatever, right? In theory, I think this is going to be really awesome. I say in theory because I've had one session and it wasn't quite my experience. Not yet. I think it might be, but it is not presently my experience. We played one session. The other 3 guys I'm playing with, they have made really cool characters. The characters they made are very colorful and funny and pretty awesome. And I was really digging that part of the game. Like, I thought the gimmicks were cool, and I thought how the players interpreted their gimmick was really neat. The MC, though, the guy playing creative, he stepped up to play creative because I felt a little uncomfortable with the system, and he was super comfortable with it. So I was happy he did that. I was really grateful that he was willing to step in and do that. But I think his style was maybe not a great match because some of us had played together before, and his style of GMing was just a little kind of conflicted a bit with what we were accustomed to. And so, I don't want to say it was bad, but it was very fast. Like he was making a lot of assumptions about what we knew about the game. And it was also, I felt like he was kind of stepping on our role playing a little bit. Like he was more concerned with the action and less concerned about the actual like RP. Whereas we were really focused on like kind of our characters, and kind of selling our characters. Like that was the more important thing to us. And so it was just a bit of a conflict, I think. But that said, we all had a good time, and I'll be emceeing it next time. So I think after I do that, I'll have a better sense of whether I like this game or not.
It does seem like, very much in your wheelhouse, judging by the names of wrestlers, at the very least.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, just reading the book, you can tell this is a really, really like carefully considered and constructed game, right? It's meant to deliver a certain type of experience. The part that I want to discover is the game more than just like these goofy wrestling matches? Like, is there more to it than that? That's the part I haven't quite figured out yet. Does that sort of line blurring between the wrestling character and the real life person playing the wrestling character, does that have any purchase? Like, isn't salient? That I don't know. So I can't wait to see, though.
I've only played it once, which was at Camp Nerdly last year. I had the great fortune of our MC was Joe Zantek, and he does a spot-on Jesse the Body Ventura. I mean, it's textbook, guys. And one of the things that I found, speaking to the whole real life of wrestler versus what's going on stage, there was a moment when creative wanted a wrestler to lose, and that player decided the wrestler didn't want to lose.
Right, yeah.
And, that's kind of a neat moment. So I think it's there. I think you'll discover it. It is one of my favorite sports-themed RPGs that I've ever played. And I
wait, how long is that list?
It's huge. No, it's not that big.
Well, there's a baseball RPG missing. I know that. But
yeah. There's Contenders, boxing.
I agree, Rich. Like, I can see there's a lot of that going on. There are like playbook moves, for example, or gimmick moves that kind of override like creative's power to like determine who wins and doesn't win the match, right? And some of that came out, and we kind of have like a nice little interesting story going on in the promotion, so to speak. But I think my biggest issue with it this time was not so much system, but just more like we just had maybe kind of a mismatch between the GM and the players a little bit. But that's the sort of thing that happens when you're with somebody who you've never played with before. Like, that's going to happen. So I have a lot of like flexibility there. Like, I get that that's a thing that happens, and so I'm not too worried about it. It takes everybody time to get used to people, and especially because he was taking up GMing duties, like kind of at not the last minute, but like, that day, we kind of came to that decision.
Okay.
So, I think next session is going to be the real interesting one. One thing that I want to point out that I forgot to mention is, while Rich and I are having our wrestling match, the other players can be announcers, okay? Like they can be the announcers of the action. The way I'm led to believe it's supposed to happen based off the text is the announcers can kind of like periodically like just sort of like summarize what's going on, or like add in little details, or, just do that sort of like ringside announcery sort of thing that announcers do. And they have like a really cool mechanical feature that once per match per wrestler, they can make a die roll go from like miss to middle tier or from middle tier to high tier hit. And the way they do that is they do this thing, this is a wrestling term called putting the wrestler over. And so like the wrestler does the move and maybe I get like a 7 to 9 on the roll, which means the audience is kind of like, okay, that's kind of cool. But the announcers can like pump it up, right? Like they can talk about how awesome it actually was, right? And that like pushes your result up to a 10 plus. And so that's kind of a neat little feature of the game.
I really like that the other players not involved, not wrestling in the match, aren't just sitting out. I love that.
Yeah, it's a neat feature. It was a good touch because you can very quickly realize, like, immediately the first thing I thought before I realized that was a feature of the game was, oh, well, if I'm wrestling his guy, what's everyone else doing during that, right? Like, are we just sitting there? So,
yeah.
But no, I can't wait to try it again. I think we've got a few more sessions on the calendar, and I have really high hopes for it.
Oh, so one more thing, Jason. To be clear,
sure.
Last episode, Rich was taking you to task for never having to, prep another game because you just recycle old material. And you're like, well, hold on a second, Rich. I'm prepping for a new game. And this was that game, and you didn't actually run it, right?
No, I also prepped Blades in the Dark, motherfucker.
Oh, all right.
I knew that was coming.
And I did actually like prep Worldwide Wrestling. I just asked this guy if he'd want to GM it because I didn't feel super comfortable with it after I read the book. I was like, I think I do now, and I'm glad someone was there to do it because I think I have a better handle on it now, and I think I can do it. It's a little different. Like it's kind of an oddball as far as PBTA games go, in that it's kind of structured. It's not the sort of game where it's like, oh, our characters are just roaming around talking to each other or whatever, right? It's not that kind of game. It has more structure. So it's a little strange, but it was good. So for our circumstances, it was good. I can't wait to see where it goes.
Cool.
Steve, tell us which Star Wars game you played this week.
Sadly, I didn't get to revisit Imperial Assault. I went to the house with the kids, but they wanted to play Flashpoint. But this week I did play Star Wars World, which we mentioned a time or two in the last episode. Star Wars World is a apocalypse world powered by the apocalypse hack of Star Wars. Obviously, it's pretty much all there in the title, and I am over-explaining. Anyway, so Star Wars World, I've read it a few times, and it's always been a lot of fun. And this time around, like I mentioned last time, I'm doing my first series, and this was the second session of that. And I'm really liking the way things are going. I'm planning big fun things for the next session. I think we're going 5, so the next session will be big and explosive, I think. This newest version, the Omega version of the Star Wars World playbooks, features bonds in place of the old Apocalypse World HX relationship type thing. Unlike you, Jason, I don't have a ton of experience with bonds because I've only dealt with them in Dungeon World, and I've only played Dungeon World like 4 times. But like you, I'm not a huge fan. I didn't see much positive come out of them in the Dungeon World I played. I don't know. I'm still not a fan of them in Star Wars World, honestly.
Flags are the new hotness. Flags.
I made a little note here to check flags out for next time. It sounds like it gives you a good excuse to involve other characters in your fun stuff. I like that.
Yeah, we should tell listeners what that is. Somebody on Evil Hat's forums or their blog or something.
I want to say it was Rob Donahue.
Yeah.
Was it? It might have been. Yeah, I don't know who it was. They came up with this idea called flags. It was a short little blog post. It was really good though, and we've been using them in the Wednesday game, or we used them once, and they were pretty cool so far. The idea is these are behaviors that you envision your character engaging in, or you have a certain vision of your character. Another player, if they do the thing on the flag that causes you to act in that way, then they get an XP. So it's like an incentive for other players to engage your character in the way you envision them being engaged. And it works pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Did you find that it seemed to give out like too much XP when paired with XP on a miss?
There was still only 1 XP at stake. It's just like Dungeon World. Like at the end of the session, as long as you hit someone's flag, you got an XP.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
You could probably tailor it for whatever game. Like if giving more XP is appropriate, you can probably do that.
We have a fairly force-heavy setup, I think. Between the 2 sessions, we have 4 regular players. 2 of them are Force users, one a more standard Jedi type. Maybe I shouldn't say standard. Teetering on the brink between light side and dark side, but still got a lightsaber. And the other is a Force Adept, the Adept playbook. More of a, non-lightsabery sort of, I want to say Force Witch. That's not really I don't know that that's actually a thing, but they're sort of a
Rich,
natural...
is that a thing? A Force witch?
Well, there are the Night Witches, and they use the Force, so sure.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Just want to get a little. Just want to get an official adjudication there.
I'm not official. I'm not
Star
at
Wars
all
nerd,
official.
so
You're as close as we get. And then we have a bounty hunter and a medic droid. The droid is being played by a couple of time co-host Farrell, I think. And this is all taking place on a water world. And I'm like, Farrell, hey, do you have like a waterproof suit or something? He goes, no, I don't think I'm going to be waterproof. I'm like, Farrell, I want to strongly urge you to be waterproof on this world that's like 98% water. You sure? Nah. Okay. All right. We'll see where that goes. Good job, Farrell. Making things interesting for me. But this past session, we had Discern Reality's co-host David in town, and he stepped in and played our third Force user. He was a more standard Jedi to cancel out the very gray at best Jedi that
the oddball Jedi you had, yeah.
Yeah, so Scott and Kristen are in the game, also one time or two or several time co-hosts, and they're going to be. let me sum up Scott's character like this: they're going to be out of town in a couple weeks. I think I could probably replace Scott with a folded over index card that just says "I kill it with the Force," and then every time I need to know what Scott's character's got to do, is like, "Hey, Scott, okay, no, I got it."
Are you calling Scott out right now?
Ouch.
And then for other games, like if he's ever absent, I could just replace it, just scratch out the Force part. I kill it. Just I kill it. I choke it out. Yeah. My favorite part was David played a pretty, stand-up good Jedi type, and he knew he was only going to be here for one session, and so he ended it by getting fed up with the other Force users' ways, and just saying like, I can't help you if you're not willing to not be pieces of dark side crap or whatever, and then stormed out. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Did he call a bunch of pieces of Sith?
No, it wasn't quite like that. He still, in fiction, I had him leave them like because he was a native to the planet that they're not familiar with, and so I had him leave them a little data pad type thing and use that mechanic I heard you guys mention on Discern Realities, basically the equivalent of you guys have a joint pool of data pad 3 whenever you need to learn a fact about the planet or something like that. You can say, hey, can we learn about blah, blah, blah by spending this point? And the answer is yes.
Neat.
Hey, question.
Yeah.
As I've stated before, I don't really care about Star Wars that much. I don't know anything about Star Wars, but I'm curious how it works as a PBTA game. Like, what do you think about that part of the game?
So I haven't played the other official Star Wars games. I think there were 3 official publishers, West End Games, right, Wizards of the Coast, and now Fantasy Flight. I haven't played any of those.
Yeah.
But they all, at least certainly certainly what I've seen of them seems fairly mechanic heavy. And in my play of Star Wars World, it seems perfectly suited to this type of thing. You can do high action, high adventure. It was just a one-shot. One shot I ran featured what was it called? It's like the Captain Playbook or something like that. It's somebody that has a ship and a crew, and I came into the game knowing nothing about who the characters were or where the game was going to go, and 4 hours later there was planetary bombardment and Jedis, flying around on rooftops and chasing each other, and all sorts of Star Wars appropriate stuff that the game facilitates, and it works super well. And it deals with the Force very well too. The Force user playbooks all have more or less the same basic Force using power, and it's just you sort of take before you get to wounds, before your character is seriously wounded, you have vitality. It's the equivalent of stress or stress and fate or something like that. That goes away much quicker. And so you take one stress, or if you're wounded, up to one wound, and then you have 3 Force points, right? And you can, so long as you have Force points, you can do the minor stuff, like just bring your, telekinetically bring your lightsaber to you, that sort of thing. That's just, so long as you have it, it costs nothing. Then you can do major stuff, like maybe Force push somebody away from you, move larger things, or it has a specific list by spending
or lift
a point.
A Star Truck or something.
Yes, that is definitely canon, Star Trucks. And there's, it works very well, and then the individual playbooks have their own moves. And I also like that there's something called when you use the Force to do something new, I think. I'm not positive on the wording there, but it's more or less like that. Then you make a roll, and theoretically, it if it goes well, you do the thing, and that can be like Kylo Ren in the latest movie. He basically pauses a blaster shot in midair, and somebody I think attempted to do that this time around. They sort of pause a blaster shot in the air, and you don't need to move for it. You just have the do something new move, and if it goes well, it goes well. If not, hooray! I get to do fun Apocalypse Worldy on a miss things, right? But I think it works perfectly for Star Wars.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No.
All right, cool. Rich, you wanted to talk about Maul, right?
I do. I want to talk about Maul one last time. So Maul, for those who haven't been following for the last 3 months plus, that is the play-by-post game of Apocalypse World 2nd Edition. This started off before the Kickstarter, so we were just using the stuff that was released to Patreon backers. And so we didn't have the cool faceless or the news or
child thing.
The child thing or the water bearer, I want to say.
Right.
Anyway, those really neat custom playbooks or the new playbooks that are part of it didn't have any of that. It was mostly just the playbooks that had been revamped for 2nd edition. The play-by-post came to a close. I pitched it to end at the end of February. We went and leaked a few days into March. It went rather well. I was quite pleased. I'm most excited because a couple of the players, Tim and Robert, for sure, I'm not sure if any of the other players have already started their own PvP games, so there are other play-by-post games that are spawning out of the group that got together and had such a great little jam session.
Yeah, a lot of stuff has spawned out from it. I'm in touch with at least 7 or 8 people who are doing either Apocalypse World or Dungeon World play-by-post. A lot of the Dungeon World ones were inspired by Tim's Dungeon World thing he ran, but he got his idea for his Dungeon World thing from your Apocalypse World game. So,
yay! That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so excited
really cool.
to spread the love. Not to say these guys haven't played play-by-post before. I think quite a few of them had, but it was just really neat to see the interest kind of spark up because it was a very solid group. We had one player attrition. And as I kind of post-mortem that, I really feel like there were a few scenes that I cut short on him just due to post-frequency and some other trying to keep everything in the same timeline. And so that post rate and communication was a little poor. It was amicable. It was just one of those like, hey, this session, as we call it, is ending. Do you want in on the next session? Maybe not. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Walk away. Epilogues just happened. And as is, we talk about epilogues always being great. Again, it is so fun, especially in a literary style of game, to see people put a bow on the character stories they built up. As a 3-month game, it's very short for play-by-post. I think, Jason, you've mentioned that you felt like you'd just gotten into starting off with Build a Barrier.
Yeah, I felt that's why I didn't do an epilogue also. I feel like my character, so I didn't post as frequently as everyone else. I posted considerably more infrequently. And I think because of that, my character just kind of felt like I was just revving up with my character. Like I was kind of just getting my character into a storyline that I thought would be pretty cool. Now, having said that, I enjoyed everything that I was kind of doing with my character, mostly because I was playing it really, I don't know what the right word is. I was definitely going for something a little more like experimental or sort of narratively avant-garde with my character, and I don't know if people had patience for it or not, but I had there was a certain element of mixed up personalities in my character. There was a lot of unreliability in the things that my character said and thought, or at least they perceived things in a way that was that was very strange and difficult to suss out. There were certain times when I flat out my character mostly wore a suit that obscured what they look like. And when he wasn't wearing the suit, I purposely didn't say what he looked like. I kept it real, kind of open and vague. And so I was having fun, kind of exploring some little narrative tricks with the character. But as far as the story, I personally felt like my story was just getting going. But that's not a criticism of the game at all. It was just kind of where I landed.
Yeah, it's a pace thing. And I felt like we could have kept going. I really felt like the game probably could have kept going, but I wanted to hold to that 90 days. I saw other people were starting up other games, and so I was like, yeah, let's go ahead. We'll call it at this point.
It seems like everyone else got a good, solid story out of this, so I think it's awesome. I think it was probably the right time to end it.
Yeah, so that was fun. Another thing that I wanted to mention I didn't put on the notes is that this was a game I co-emceed with my buddy Paul. That was interesting. It was the first time he'd run an Apocalypse World game. And while we've run a lot of one-on-one, play-by-post, he hadn't really emceed or GM'd a whole lot of stuff on play-by-post other than just solo. So that was neat, the kind of behind the scenes. We had a whole Google folder and chat going on where we would talk through scenes and try to find that good balance of, do we want to add and just play certain characters or own certain places, like, if we go to the malt shop, this is where the character has, you'll be the MC of the malt shop. And what we found was the best mix was each of us would be kind of leading a scene, and that was really helpful. And so by the end, I really felt like we had hit our stride, and he was having some really, really strong scenes that I was just kind of blown away. Like, I would not have thought of that, and he is so much a better writer than I am. I'm like, so just slapdash. Like, words happen in a thing, go. And he's painting a picture. He knows words that have more than 4 syllables. I'm like, dang, Paul, you rock. It was fantastic, and I'm very happy with it.
What did you guys think of what you saw of the Apocalypse World 2nd Edition rules?
I'm excited to know more about the changes to fronts from that little snippet that we received in the Apocalypse World preview.
Yeah, very different.
It is, which is great because I am horrible with fronts and threats. Like, I conceptualize it a little bit, but I have a really hard time actually putting it to paper. Like, it's all in my head, and maybe something makes it easier to codify will be easier for me. The other piece of the previews is there's this thing called lifestyles. I have no freaking idea. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I get it. You got to spend some barter every. Well, yeah, that's great, but the brainer starts with 8 barter. So, when does it matter? So that part, I'm looking forward to seeing some explanation how that actually works. I'm sure there are people who've already grokked it. I'm not one of them. So we kind of walk away from that.
Okay.
Cool. Was there anything else you want to say about it, Rich?
Big thanks to everyone who participated in them all. Thank you so much for playing. It was great.
Yeah, and thank you, Rich. It was really awesome. I'm really glad I did it. I was hesitant initially because I've never done play-by-post, and I've never really thought that play-by-post is something I would really love. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I still think it's probably not my jam so much. But having said that, it was really enjoyable, and I liked your methodology a lot. And I really got a kick out of how much everybody else was enjoying it so much. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, it was cool to see the excitement that everyone had about it. But as I've said before, I role play so I can do stupid voices. So play by post will always have a certain it will always be a little less satisfying for me personally because of that. But maybe I could do audio clips of my guy. That'd be pretty great. Post in some audio.
Ooh, there you go. Next project.
They don't have to write shit. I can just record all my little things I'm saying.
You can play the news. You just do radio broadcasts.
Exactly right. No, but it was super cool. It was neat. Cool. Let's go to the next segment. Okay, our next segment is a new segment called Toolbox. This is where we are going to just discuss a little tip for making your gaming experience better. I get asked personally, I know Rich probably does too, but I get asked a lot for advice on running games. And so I thought it would be nice to start doing a little segment where we share some of that information, start to answer some of those questions sort of officially, because I do get asked quite a bit about different aspects of running games. So this week, for our inaugural Toolbox, I want to talk about Pinterest image search. Okay. Now, Rich threw out Google image search as well, but I think...
Yes, Jason. Why don't we just use Google to search for images? You can even right-click on an image and then search Google for that image. Why would I not just do that?
You could, but Pinterest is way, way better. I've only recently discovered it myself. I was a Google image searcher, but Pinterest image search is awesome because it's really fast for one thing. The more detail you add in, the more precise results you get. And I find that's not often the case with Google because Google is like the whole internet. You're going to get lots and lots of hits that are not relevant to what you're searching for. But Pinterest is just about posting images. That's all it is. Your results are just they tend to be a lot more solid. So the other day I was looking for a sexy male pirate with blue hair. Okay. Don't ask why. I just was. And it was for a game. I was looking for a sexy
Dungeon World.
A sexy male pirate with blue hair. And like I typed that into Pinterest image search, and in like 2 seconds I had like 10, 12 hits. Like they were great. All of them would have worked fine. So I was like, yes, this is so cool. Abandoned city, tower, statue. You know, like you just type in these like different words that like, you know, to evoke some images, and you're going to get some really, really great results. Why would you want to do this? Well, okay. So now that I play a lot of games online, I find that throwing up an image into the Roll20 of just like kind of what the characters are looking at, whether it be a monster or a location, it helps like kind of create a shared headspace, right? A shared like sort of theater of the mind, right? I just think it's a good little touch. Lately, I've gone away from doing like actual maps for Dungeon World, like drawing out like room by room maps, and instead just putting up like collages of pictures of places, and that's working really well. So I'm into it. It's a fairly new thing for me. This might be something that other people have been doing for years. I'm sure it is. But when I played face to face, I didn't bring a bunch of pictures. We just sat around the table and we like talked it out, and that energy at the table helped supply the good times and imaginary fun. But I find that on doing online gaming, it's really quite nice to have those images that kind of help create a little bridge between the players and me. So yeah, Pinterest image search, super powerful, really, really great results, especially for fantasy stuff.
Yeah, you actually inspired me to join Pinterest for the first time today. And before we recorded, I was just sort of going through and looking for images appropriate to the Star Wars World game I'm running, just typing in things like Star Wars, Nautilon, Kit Fisto, whatever, you know. Those mean nothing to you, Jason. I see the blank look on your face.
I know what Star Wars. I know that. So
it's very rudimentary, right? on my first try here. So I'm just getting into it. I'm just realizing, I can drag and drop these things to save them all, and I don't have to like save the files to my hard drive and then print them out or whatever. Yeah. I'm an old person. I don't get these things.
It's neat. You can pin them to your own board. You can create a board for play by post. I've actually used it to create. Like, this is the look for this particular character. And then instead of being, they're wearing jeans and a t-shirt, I could actually describe or show what they're wearing. It's really cool. It's got a lot of uses. I'm with you on that one, Jason. Although the search isn't something that I've utilized a whole lot. Now I'll have to try to master that one too.
So my one complaint so far is that, like if I were using Google image search, then I could search for, I don't know, like if there were a specifically named blue-haired pirate, sexy blue-haired pirate named, Barnacle Bill or whatever, I could type in sexy. There we go, Giordano. I could type in sexy blue-haired pirate minus Giordano, and Google would show me non-Giordano related things.
Yeah. No, there are some limitations. Like you can't get specific image sizes, right? You're kind of just stuck with whatever people pinned up. I think the reason why I like it is it just feels better curated to me. Like because Pinterest is just about posting up pictures of things, your results they just seem like a lot more like accurate. Like, like I'm looking for images of things and this website is just images of things, I'm not getting images from websites where the word Giordano was prominently featured, right? or pirate, right? Like, I'm not getting that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say about it. Just a little quick segment. And, if you're not using Pinterest image search, go check it out. It's really cool. Let's go to the next thing. So today we wanted to talk about the GGG Gamer. That's not going to mean anything to you probably because I am originalizing a concept. So kind of like my 731 thing, my 731 unified theory of GM prep. GGG Gamer is a thing that I'd like to make a thing. Dan Savage, the sex advice columnist and podcaster, he has this concept called GGG. You are a GGG sex partner, right? And GGG stands for Good, Giving, and Game. Okay. Good is like you're actually good at sex or you're prepared to at least like, do the things that you're supposed to do, like with your partner. You're not like just kind of fumbling around or you didn't forget to bring a condom or whatever, right? Giving means that you care equally about not just your own pleasure, but the pleasure of your partner. And then game is being up for anything or within reason, right? Like, so if you want to try out something new and different, being up for it, that's game. I was thinking about that and I thought, man, I feel like there's probably a way to make this into a gaming thing, like to sort of define best practices between players at the table, right? And let me tell you why I was originally thinking about this at all in the first place. A few weeks ago for our other podcast, our Dungeon World podcast, Discern Realities, I had to prepare for a segment where we talked about like player behaviors and like things that are annoying that players do and things that are good that players do. And that got me just thinking kind of big picture about like the relationships between players. I don't necessarily mean relationships between the GM and the players, but like the relationships between the actual players at the table, whether it's a GM-less game or not. That's kind of my little intro there to my GGG. Okay, my GGG is geared, giving, and game. Okay, not good. And shout out to Steve for geared, which I thought was a nice touch. I was originally just going to call it good, but geared makes more sense. So geared means like geared up. It means being prepared for what we're doing. Here's what I mean by that. If the GM has asked you to read some material before the game starts, do it. If you are playing a game online, make sure your equipment is ready to go. Try to minimize how much time, how much of other players' time you're wasting, right? If you are playing in a genre with which you have no familiarity or you have little familiarity, do a little bit of research first so that you understand the tropes of, say, cyberpunk, or you understand like some of the, the language of noir fiction or whatever, right? Just do a little bit of research. You don't have to have read the whole RPG text. Just be a little prepared. This is the easy one.
Or watch a movie or something.
Yeah, watch a movie. That's great.
Watch Blade Runner.
Yeah. Geared is really easy. That's the easy one. It just means being ready, prepared, and which leads to a sort of respectfulness for everyone else's time, right? I don't have much more to say about that one. That's the least interesting of the three, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's worth saying. The more interesting one, I think, is giving. Giving, this is about being a selfless player, and here's what I mean by that. From the earliest days in the hobby, we've been taught you are playing your character. You are responsible for your character's thoughts and actions, and the GM is responsible for the world, right? And so I think we're all kind of oriented, especially those of us who've been around for a long time, like in more traditional role-playing game traditions, like we've been playing since the 80s and 90s or whatever. We're oriented to be like, okay, I am my character. My character is my responsibility. I think that's got to change. And I think when I say giving, what I mean is showing an interest in everyone's character, not just your own character. I think sometimes players come to the table, not intending for, to be a jerk, but I think they come to the table with lots and lots of backstory sometimes. Like I've thought of all these things about my character, and, I've had players like hand me typewritten documents, like I've had like stapled typewritten documents handed to me, like when they sit down. That's not selfless play. To me, that you're sending the wrong signal. You're sending a signal of, I'm really only concerned about my character. And, you may not have bad intentions with that, but it kind of comes off in a certain way, to me at least. And I know to other players, sometimes, people I've talked to, it comes off weird. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if I would take as hard a stance, like it comes off with you being selfish, but I do agree with the assertion that absolutely nobody gives a shit, and none of that will ever come up in all likelihood.
A lot of times people just don't care about all this backstory, right? I mean, now, Rich, I think you said sometimes people do care, but I don't know. What do you think, Rich?
My thought is that, okay, a mile of backstory, sure. Nobody's going to say, yeah, give me your 10-page backstory. But some backstory to me is also being geared.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. Trying to integrate yourself to the world. Trying to integrate yourself to set yourself up for some of the other characters. And try to have some kind of vernacular so that it isn't... Not everybody can like super improv, Sometimes it's really good to have a few touchstones coming in that are at least based in, like, my character has this gear that I had to pick. Why don't I have a little story as to why I got this dagger? Because not everybody can do that off the top of their head. So I think there's some backstory that is, as long as you don't close it off and you've got your own little world going off in the corner here that nobody else is involved in, there's some backstory can be okay. It really can,
I agree.
at least in my games.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
with you. I agree. Yeah, I don't want it to seem like I'm coming off as like you have to come like pure and virginal with no thoughts at all about your character. Everything happens at the table. I don't mean that. That's not what I mean to say. In fact, my favorite characters are the ones where the player has like can summarize their character in like, 3 or 4 sentences maybe. And then from there, we use that as like our jumping off point to develop the character more. I think some backstory is fine and in fact necessary.
In fairness, I have known some gamers that do come to the table pretty virginal, though.
Wait.
Oh my God, Steve.
Wow.
All right. Well, okay. So, Rich, yours is a good segue. What you said is a good segue for truly what I mean by when I say giving. So, don't come to the table like with the attitude like this is just my story, right? Here's the thing you can do to behave in a giving way, I think. All right. Now, bear in mind, we're developing this concept, right? This concept, it's not set in stone yet. And if people have objections to it, they should tell me, or if they have additions, they should tell me. I think you should be willing to ask questions about other players' characters.
Yes, absolutely.
Show some investment in the whole group, right? Here's the thing you can do. Really, really easy tactic is engage in some GM-like thinking, right? Go after the session is over, if you know you're going to be meeting again in a week or whatever, think about what happened in the session and think about other characters at the table and think about like maybe questions you can ask the players about their character or cool details that you can use to kind of follow up, with their character on, like show an interest in the other players, what they're doing. And it's going to just create a really nice environment at the table. One of the things I really love about our Saturday morning games is everyone at the table seems really, really genuinely interested in everyone else and kind of what they're doing. And that comes through really nicely in the play, right? Like you can tell it feels like a communal sort of process. It feels like a group storytelling process. And I just think it leads to better story. I think it leads to better feeling around the table. And it's an easy thing to do. So, between sessions, think about the other players. In the middle of the session, help the GM out, like follow up with probing questions. In these PBTA games, I think sometimes we kind of leave it all on the GM to be the person who asks questions and who kind of draws out the fiction from the player. You, as a player, you can do that too. And other players are not going to resent that. In fact, they're going to love it. When I say being a giving player, that's really more what I mean. It's about like showing an active interest in the other players' characters. So
one of the things I love the Saturday morning crew because they're great examples of that giving attitude. One of the things I do when I play in a hangout game is I try to, and hopefully people will know what I mean by this, but I try to make sure I see the big head version of everyone every once in a while. Because if someone's not talking, they don't pop up on the main screen. They're always just a little avatar at the bottom. And so I try to stay cognizant, player or GM, regardless. If I'm at the table, I'm trying to make sure that everybody gets a chance. And even if I have to bend a little bit of my character's logic, I'll try. Yeah, sure, okay. I'll why not? The wizard could possibly help us. I will go ask him too, because you're here to play.
I've noticed.
Yeah,
I've noticed that like if there's a player who hasn't had any talking time, or they haven't like been as talkative as everyone else. I've noticed you do that, Rich. I've noticed you'll kind of swing the conversation to them, and I've often wondered if it's. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it's just because you GM a lot of games, and so that's kind of your instinct to do that. But truly, players should do that. I think it's really good. I think it's super good behavior, and it really, really shows. Not to get too sappy with it, but it shows like a level of like kindness and care to like everybody else at the table. And I think you can't go wrong by doing that. So, be giving to your fellow players, listeners.
And it doesn't always have to be in character. I mean, I've even had points where I'm like, I'll send a chat message to the game master like, hey, we haven't seen a scene with so and so in a while. I'm cool with giving up my thing, or I'll even say, hey, this scene's gone for a little while. Do you guys want to smash cut over to somebody else? I'm cool with that.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
I think giving can also be, at least I don't know if we explicitly talked about this, but sort of looking for opportunities to, I don't know, insert elements into the story that the other players / characters will play off of. Like if another player's playing a hot-headed character, then you do something that you figure will piss the character off. If someone's playing a hero that swoops in and rescues somebody, you get in trouble, right? Look for opportunities to do things that involve the other players.
That's the beauty of flags, right? Like we were
Yeah,
talking about flags earlier.
Well, you just described
theoretically,
flags.
You just totally just
Cool.
you totally just described
Yeah.
flags, and that's kind of why, after we did that session of Dungeon World with the flags, afterwards I polled the group. We talked about it to see how it went, and everyone liked it, and they were all saying like, yeah, I was like actively thinking about ways to get my character involved with their character, or do I was actively thinking of ways to get that character to do the thing that they want to do,
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a codified way of doing what you've just described, right? So yeah, it's super good insight there.
All right, cool.
One last thing that I wanted to mention, Jason, you can talk me down if you don't think this is good feedback, but
Well, it's a developing concept. It's not set in stone, so go for it. Yeah.
well, if this fits or doesn't fit, one of the things that recently after a game where someone had come in, it was their first time in this game that was going on for it was the Dungeon World game that we had a while back, where someone came in and they specifically said, okay, I just washed up off the shore. I don't know anybody. And there were points where I was stymied. I'm like, how do I involve? I can't pick this person out of the crowd. I have no connection to them whatsoever. And after the game, I tried to be gentle, but I call myself Orc Lord for a reason. So maybe I didn't pull it off, but I was like, hey dude, just so you know, like I wanted to interface with your character. Like I wanted to find a thing. Next time, try to open up a little bit so that we can kind of engage.
Yeah.
And I know that's on the MC, but
It was-
I also think that players can do that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I do think that in that particular circumstance, it was somewhat my fault in this way. That Dungeon World game was really focused around like this one specific location and having this, and really like kind of depending heavily on like character interaction. I don't normally run Dungeon World that way, so it's not my comfort zone. And frankly, I mean, I run lots of games that has that feature, but Dungeon World doesn't give you many tools to do it, right? Like it doesn't give you lots of like good like character drama tools, in my opinion. And so I think if we had been doing flags, that might have been a lot better. It occurred to me, like, after the fact, that I would have personally enjoyed those sessions a lot more if we'd had flags then, so that we could have.
I look forward to if we return to that.
Yeah,
flags,
we could have avoided that. I know which situation you're describing, and I think it's more my fault just because I probably should have given that character like a solid love letter into the story or something, but I just didn't. So, but no, for sure. There's a certain level of like getting back to the giving thing. I think that throwing the other players a line, is helpful, right? Like giving them like a reason to
and saying it's okay,
Yeah.
like telling another player, hey, it's okay to be. To allow me to be giving,
Right?
to you.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
We're gonna have fun together.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to the last point then, which is game. Okay, and in my definition, and also Dan Savage's sex partner definition, game means being up for it. Okay, but specifically, what I mean is sometimes kind of segueing from giving, players are going to introduce ideas about your character that you maybe didn't foresee, and that are possibly negative or hindering, and they hinder your character in some way, or are detrimental to your character in the fiction in some way. And I don't think you necessarily should always take those things. Like if somebody has an idea for your character that you don't agree with, like you just fundamentally don't agree with it, then maybe you don't do it. But at least consider that it might move the story in a cool direction, right? And that's it.
Don't just reflexively say no because it's not your thing.
Don't be a defensive player. I have a real issue with defensive play. And again, it kind of goes back to, this comes again from our traditional RPG roots, right? Like the origin of the hobby has made us this way.
Yep.
Everyone's out to get me. Or the GM's out to get me, right? The GM's out to get me. I have to be defensive. I have to look at everything suspiciously. And again, I'm responsible for my character. Therefore, I have to protect my character, right? Role-playing games have moved on. It's not an easy thing to shake, though. I get it. But I've played with players in the last few years, who have come from a more traditional role-playing game background, and they do this. They play so defensively. Like, someone at the table offers up a really cool idea that makes their character in the fiction, like, you know, have some kind of debility or maybe a drug problem, or they have some kind of shady past or whatever. And the player's like, nope, I don't, you know, and you know, they're saying no because they don't want to like hurt their character, right? It's surprisingly pervasive. It's a surprisingly pervasive like mode of play. And I just want to encourage people to kind of get away from it, like get away from defensive play dangerously. Look for trouble, right? This is what Burning Wheel and Apocalypse World have been trying to teach us for years, right? Like a failed roll doesn't mean like it's all bad. Like it means good story, right? We fail forward, right? If a player says, "Wow, I think it would be so cool if your character did X, Y, Z," and there seems to be some agreement at the table, like, "Oh yeah, that would be cool," it probably means it would be cool, and you should consider doing it. Thoughts?
I have a tendency, or at least I used to have a tendency to do something that I think ties in with this, just sort of turtle my character, and if there's danger, not necessarily danger to my character concept, but danger to, you know, my hit points or whatever, then I would be extremely resistant and waste time, you know, overly preparing instead of just sort of jumping in and having fun. And it took Fate's aspects, more or less, to break me of that habit and let me realize, oh no, drama and danger, that's what this is about, and that's the fun part of this.
I think that's sometimes what it takes for people is to play the game, the one game that shows them that, you know? But it's super instinctive, and even now, I play with players who do it. I'm not going to call them out, but I play with players who do it, and it's a pervasive thing. Like, these characters had a life before you got your hands on them, and they're going to have a life, you know, a fictional life after you're done with them. While you have hold of them, make their life awesome, right? Like do the most you can with them, like right now, for this little short span of time you have with the character. That's game.
Well, game to me, what you're talking about, the playing defensively, objecting to other people's offers, that goes hand in hand with that overly long backstory that cuts people off. I mean, they're very similar.
Yeah, all these things are kind of tied in. Well, Geared is a little, like, just more of a pragmatic thing. But yeah, no, for sure. No, absolutely. It's a mindset, right? It's a certain mindset.
One of the things, and you know, I've been gaming for a while, and so that defensive play is something that I fight. And one of the things that I do when someone makes an offer or asks, you know, hey, why don't you do this thing, is if I immediately have this, like, no reaction, like, no, my character would never do that. Like, what are you doing? Stop that. What I try to do, the first thing I say is before I verbalize, try to say, okay, what is it about the suggestion that they have made that bothers me? Is it because it's tonally different than what I saw? Is it because I don't understand if they're setting me up for something else? Like, those are the questions that I try to ask myself to put myself off guard, like to help lower my defensiveness. And then I'll ask a question back. So if it's one of those where I had that gut reaction, I'll say, what do you mean? What do you mean it'd be funny if that was my cousin's sister's uncle? I don't really understand. And then they'll kind of tease it out a little bit.
Right.
Oh, okay, I see what you're going for. You know, I can maybe I'll counteroffer a little bit, but I'm still accepting, or I'm still negotiating, and it gives me not only the chance to not feel like they just yanked away my agency, blah blah blah, but we got to have a little conversation about some of their expectations and the idea of what kind of tone they want out of the game. So don't just say no, even if it's the worst idea you've ever heard.
Yeah, be open to at least discussing it, right? I mean, in PBTA games especially, right? It's a conversation, you know? I mean, one of the things that I always, probably the last, like, you know, 2 or 3, 4 sessions I've played of different PBTA games, I've had to remind myself that the game's a conversation, you know, because I think when you get in the habit of running these games, it's really easy to kind of get on autopilot. But it's good to give players the space to talk this shit out around the table, you know, to talk this stuff out. And that's just, you know, that's part and parcel of what you're saying there, Rich. Like, it should be a conversation about what's going to lead to the best story. And, I think that's what I'd really love to impress on people, you know, be open to things, be up for, at least be game for the conversation, if nothing else.
Yeah. You don't always have to say yes and unless the rules say.
Right. Yeah.
But to have that conversation is really helpful, and it can broaden the game. And even if it turns out that, like, well, this is a one shot, I'll just let this thing happen to my dude because everybody else likes it. And maybe it turns out that you've learned enough about the other players within the group if there's something else you want to try next time around.
Cool. Well, I don't have anything else to say about geared giving and game, except that I want to see a dozen blog posts about it after this goes up. So don't fail me. Don't fail me, G+ community. No, I'm kidding. I've been thinking a lot about player interactions at the table, and I hope that, like, just like 731, episode 26, go listen to that one if you don't know what I'm talking about. Just like 731 is like an easy thing you can kind of grab onto in your mind when you're prepping, like when you're prepping a game as a GM, like you can kind of just grab onto those little concepts and grab onto that concept and have a good like framework for prepping a game. I think GGG can be a great framework for like when you're at the table. Like, am I being a giving player right now? Am I being a game player right now? Was I ready? That's a pre thing. But am I ready? I think those are just good things for people to keep in mind. So make everyone's life.
Yeah, it's a nice handy shorthand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like it.
Cool. All right. That's our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you should go to Google Plus and search for the Gauntlet community. Go to the community section, search for the Gauntlet. We are there. We are also on Meetup. We have a group called Gauntlet Hangouts where we run dozens of games, and you can join us there by going to Meetup and searching for the Gauntlet Hangouts, and we'll pop up there. I think maybe you have to be searching in Houston. I'm not sure. Go get the link in our community. It's there. Finally, we're on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. I haven't tweeted this week yet, so go join quickly so you can catch it when it comes out, because I know they disappear. All right.
You will miss it in the fire hose that is Twitter if you're not quick.
Also go to iTunes, and give us 5 stars. That would be really good. People love to read the reviews. That's how people can find us. The algorithms love the reviews, so go give us a 5-star review. All right. Thank you so much, Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks.
And thank you, listeners.
Hey everybody, this is the Stinger. I wanted to let you know that the Gauntlet podcast, as well as Discern Realities, our sister show, both have been nominated for Best Podcast Golden Geek Award. Now that's RPG Geek, rpggeek.com. If you're already a member, you can go in and vote, and we would very much appreciate your vote. Thank you so much for the nomination. We are proud and excited to be in such esteemed company. That's rpggeek.com.